I first got involved in, let's say, the natural health community, acting against it for Health Canada. So what happened is there was an old herbalist in Kamloops named Jim Strauss, and he had imported some herbs from the United States, things that are perfectly legal to own, and Health Canada seized the herbs at the border. And so he sues Health Canada to try and get his herbs back, and Health Canada hired the law firm I was at, and the file was thrown at me, and so I took the file, and I basically had his case thrown out of court on procedural grounds. And sometimes I get booed when I say that, so you're a kind crowd. But you have to appreciate, I actually was glad to do that, because I had been, just raised in a normal middle-class home that didn't have any connections to the natural health community. The media, the education, society at large taught me and taught society at large that actually it's the allopathic hospitals or allopathic doctors that have the medical answers. I mean, they are the mainstream medical movement. We all have this image of the doctor in a white lab coat with a stethoscope, and that represents basically competence in healing. So much so that even natural health product manufacturers use that image of the doctor when they advertise. That's how ingrained in our collective consciousness it is as kind of authority for healing. And the idea that somebody, some herbalist in Kamloops, could be selling herbs that have not been approved by the government just struck me as outrageous. This guy was a dangerous rogue. I mean, think about it. He was selling herbs that Health Canada had not certified as safe. Can you imagine? I'm being completely facetious. So, but the point is I accepted it. I was glad to have this thing thrown out of court, and my conversion came through the same herbalist. Because shortly after that, I left the firm I was at, I started my own firm, and he got charged by the Provincial Prosecution Service with practicing medicine. So the provincial act that gives doctors their medical monopoly says only doctors can practice medicine, and practicing medicine includes making treatment claims, and he claimed he could cure heart disease. And he wasn't shy about it. I mean, literally, he drove around with a van with big writing on the side, "I cure heart disease." Like there was no way I could go to court and convince a judge that he wasn't guilty of practicing medicine. So I had to, I'm pretty tenacious when it comes to trying to defend people, so I had to come up with some other way. And so what I decided to do was actually ask the court to strike down the law as unconstitutional. Because here we have our Charter of Rights and Freedoms that says we have freedom of expression, and we've got this act saying you can't make a health claim, and the two don't mix. And so I was going to ask the court to strike down the laws violating our right to freedom of expression. And in preparing for that, I wanted to convince the judge that he was telling the truth. And it's not that I even had to do that, because we have freedom of expression to lie, but it's just psychologically, if you're a judge, you're more likely to strike down a law to protect somebody's right to tell the truth. So I asked this herbalist, I said, is there any way we can prove that you're telling the truth? At the time, you have to understand, there was no Strauss Herb Company. It was one shop called Natural Way Herbs. One guy, well, no, Peter was there already, but it's Jim Strauss. You're more likely to have tea than buy anything when you walked in there because you'd want to visit. It was really mom and pop shop stuff. There's no way he had a double-blind clinical trial, our gold standard of scientific evidence that's used as a weapon to kill us. So, well, it is. Science has become a weapon. It's supposed to be a tool for discovery, and it's used by a regulatory body as a weapon against us. Because you know what? If you have a serious health condition and the doctors verify it, and then you take a natural health product and you're cured, that's not evidence according to Health Canada. I mean, what do you know? So anyway, I asked this guy, is there anything we can do to prove that you're telling the truth? And he goes into the back and he brings out boxes and boxes and boxes filled with letters. And he goes, here, take this. So I go back to the office and I read all these letters, and they're all literally the same. They're people voluntarily writing in, just saying, I had serious heart disease, I was in bed, I was dying. I took your heart drops, I got well, thank you, thank you, thank you, the odd God bless you in there, thank you. Now, I can't enter those letters as evidence. That's called hearsay evidence in court. But I can call the people who wrote the letters to take the stand, take the oath, and tell their story. Health Canada says that's not evidence. In a court, that's the best evidence there is. Okay? Isn't that a disconnect? So I read through all those letters. I started making calls. I kind of had to figure out, well, who's going to be the best witness? Who's going to stand up on the stand? Who has the best story? And I narrowed it down to 5 middle-class professionals. I deliberately chose middle-class professionals because the courts like them. And they all had the following in common. Well, credibility, right? I need to convince a judge. It's all strategy. But these people had some amazing things in common. They had all had serious heart disease. They had all had at least one open heart bypass surgery. They had all continued to have serious heart disease because the allopathic model was not addressing the cause of the clogging of the arteries. They had all needed another bypass surgery to survive. And here's where they differed, is for some of them, the medical community was not willing to give them another bypass surgery because they were not likely to survive. And for some of them, they weren't willing to go through the process again because they had just found it so awful that they actually would rather die than go through that experience again. They're all at the end of the road with the allopathic medical system, so they turn to the alternative health system. They start taking the Strauss Heartdrops, they all get well. They all go back to work, they hadn't been able to work. And, but there was one side effect, as they were all angry they'd had bypass surgeries in the first place. So just a caution, if anyone takes the Strauss Heartdrops and they've had open heart surgery, you may have a sensation of anger after a while. So, but in preparing for that trial, it opened my eyes. Because before, no word of a lie, I thought it would be dangerous to allow a product like the Strauss Heartdrops on the market because it wasn't approved. It didn't comply with the regulations. This was a rogue herbalist. And now I'm in the situation where I'm on the opposite side. This isn't snake oil. And this happened about 10 years ago. If you had dared to take those heart drops off the market at that time, I could have given you the names, addresses, and phone numbers of hundreds of people whose health would have been seriously affected. Many would become bedridden, some would die. We're not talking small, insignificant consequences. People were using this product basically to stay alive. So it was a complete paradigm shift, where I had to realize, just wait a sec, or the danger is removing the product, not leaving it on the market.